And yet people have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly...
You're offended?
Into it. No.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen the fits? We'd be like, look how gay this is, and then send each other a reference photo.
And are you telling me, with a straight face, that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. This is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't buy the Mary Sue thing anyway. I find the term sexist in itself because it's Mary Sue. I don't think there's a thing called Ryan Craig.
No. When you can play the woman card,
You will.
you play the woman card, the damsel in distress.
I think the rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything. It's provocative, it asks questions, and it could mean a lot of different things. And I think that that's what was important to us.
There's this thing called self-sabotage, which just means shooting yourself in the foot. Psychologist Gay Hendricks must have had a premonition about the geniuses at Disney when he wrote about people crumbling under the weight of their own success. Here we have Disney, a massive entertainment company completely dominating every area of entertainment. And what do? They spot the shiny Star Wars franchise and decide, you know what? We simply must have that. Because why maintain the status quo when you can dive headfirst into chaos? But the real problem is what they did next. Did they pick up where George Lucas left off, basking in the legacy of his vision? No, that would be far too sensible. Okay. Then did they maybe infuse the franchise with a touch of highbrow intellectualism? Elevating the material to new heights? Also no, that would require some, actual effort. The true masters of self-destruction took a very different path. They decided to steer the Star Wars universe into a head-on collision with their family-friendly brand, all while driving away their male audience like a pack of unruly teenagers. But I actually thought it was a masterclass in how to take a beloved franchise and transform it into a smoldering dumpster fire. They couldn't wait to take the franchise and skull-drag it through the mud. And now, they're replicating this genius strategy with Marvel, because why stop at one franchise when you can burn down an entire empire? It's almost impressive, really, in a twisted, masochistic sort of way. I mean, who needs success when you can bask in the warm glow of utter self-inflicted failure? Like, it takes a special kind of genius to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory over and over again. They probably could teach a masterclass on how to massively overextend and drastically change beloved properties, and drive away loyal fans, all while setting $1 billion on fire. But what else are they gonna do? Try to make decent content people would want to watch? Yeah, don't be ridiculous.
All I've got to say, the Jedi have returned.
We're just fanatics out here waiting on Return of the Jedi. 3 years in the making. We were waiting for this.
Filmmaker and activist Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is the only female director to have won 2 Academy Awards by the age of 37. She's also the first woman and the first person of color to direct a Star Wars film.
Once upon a time, in a galaxy not so far away, there lived a mighty empire known as the Walt Disney Company. In the late 90s and early 2000s, this behemoth built its realm on the sugar-coated dreams of children, telling tales of princesses, pixies, and other fantasies. It was a world of make-believe, where little kids could escape into their most cherished reveries, untroubled by the harsh realities of adulthood. But as we all know, no self-respecting corporate overlord worth their weight in gold would dare settle for dominating only one part of the market, no matter how lucrative the tiaras and glass slippers may be. That's just poor business acumen. And the House of Mouse is nothing if not a shrewd operator. To truly conquer the world, one must cast a wider net, ensnaring every last soul in one's inescapable web of consumerism. Ruling a single demographic is for amateurs. The real power lies in conquering them all. So what was Disney's plan to achieve world domination? Did they flex their creative muscles and conjure up a brilliant new franchise from the depths of their imaginary realms? Did they unleash a torrent of original ideas, forged in the fires of innovation and artistry? Of course not, no. That would require far too much effort and originality, 2 qualities sorely lacking in the modern corporate landscape. No. Disney did what Disney does best. They bought their way to the top, because God forbid they make something from scratch. In 2009, they scooped up Marvel for $4 billion, giving them access to the lucrative comic book movie business, a realm long dominated by testosterone-fueled fanboys, with an insatiable appetite for spandex-clad heroes. Genius move, really. Stats show that 68% of comic nerds like me are male. So suddenly, Disney had their grubby mitts on a whole new group of people to exploit. But why stop there when total domination was just a few billion away? 3 years later, they added Lucasfilm to their intellectual property hoard, dropping another $4 billion to snag the rights to Indiana Jones and, more importantly, Star Wars. Now, Star Wars was probably the most hallowed of franchises, a cultural phenomenon that transcended mere entertainment and became a way of life for legions of obsessive fans. Again, this was a franchise dominated by men making up 66% of its fan base, according to the Rasmussen reports. Other studies only reinforce this gender divide, with some even suggesting upwards of 90% male viewership for certain Star Wars films. It's a realm where grown men can indulge their inner child, immersing themselves in a mythos of Jedi Knights, lightsabers, and an endless supply of action figures to collect and cherish. This isn't to say women don't enjoy these films. The stats show that men just simply made up a vast majority of the fan base, something even Kathleen Kennedy would admit. But here's where the whole thing gets mind-bogglingly stupid. After deliberately acquiring these insanely popular male-centric properties, Disney seems to be doing everything in their power to give a massive middle finger to the same fanboys they originally wanted to pander to. Suddenly, they had this compulsive need to virtue signal and appease some vague agenda, even if it means driving away the very audience that made these franchises so valuable in the first place. They're essentially sabotaging their own cash cows out of sheer ideological hubris. I mean, it's a level of corporate self-immolation that would make even Jar Jar Binks scratch his goofy head in confusion. These guys had a practically captive audience of rabid fans just yearning to throw money at them, and instead of appeasing that built-in market, they've decided to spit in their faces and alienate them at every turn. They looked at their overflowing vault of nerd gold and said, "You know what? Screw making money and entertaining our most passionate supporters. We'd rather piss them all off in the name of scoring points with the Twitterati." Brilliant business strategy. Really top-notch stuff right there. It's basically a masterclass in self-sabotage, a symphony of corporate ineptitude that would make even the most seasoned MBA graduates weep with bewilderment. Disney was once the purveyor of childhood dreams. Now, they seem intent on shattering those very illusions, trampling over the hopes and aspirations of generations of fanboys in pursuit of some misguided agenda. I mean, why bother catering to your core demographic when you can virtue signal your way into oblivion? After all, what's a multi-billion-dollar media empire without a heaping dose of ideological purity and corporate sanctimony? But maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. Disney, like the rest of us mere mortals before the great progressive awakening 30 seconds ago, once understood the fundamental differences between men and women, boys and girls, and how specific content resonated with each group. They crafted their offerings accordingly and tailored their products to the distinct interests and proclivities of their target audiences. Well, those days are long gone, sacrificed on the altar of political correctness and the ever-encroaching tide of one-size-fits-all cultural blandness. The bold lines dividing the masculine from the feminine, the heroic from the domestic, are also long gone. Now we're left with a bland, amorphous mush, a tasteless tapestry woven from focus group data and soulless corporate groupthink.
Some people don't idolize Darth Vader like I do. See, I want him to get Luke.
And I think that Luke will destroy Darth Vader.
I think that when it comes to the world of fantasy and sci-fi in general, it hasn't felt like a safe space always for people of color.
So Kevin Feige comes out in 2018 saying more than half the heroes in the MCU are going to be ladies. At the time, it was sold as this big, progressive, hell yeah moment for representation and inclusion and all that jazz. But that decision opened the floodgates for some seriously snooze-worthy, unimaginative movies and shows that made everyone wish they could get those wasted hours back.
I have my Amina Muaddi shoes, and then I have my Brandon Blackwood and systemic racism bag here. Yes. This purple little number, I love.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
I mean, that's really where it all started going downhill for the franchise. They were so desperate to pander to this made-up demographic of new viewers who didn't actually exist, while giving their core fan base the middle finger. Basic supply and demand. You can't just force-feed a product nobody wants and expect to print money. But of course, the geniuses behind the scenes clearly missed that memo. The girl power scene in Endgame that served absolutely zero purpose other than to make you want to bash your head against the nearest wall kickstarted the whole new phase, and interest in the MCU tanked harder than the Titanic after that cinematic war crime. The same things happened with the dumpster fire known as the Star Wars sequels. Force Awakens made $2 billion, then The Last Jedi rolls around, and we had a 35% drop to 1.3 billion. By the time Rise of Skywalker shambled into theaters, it was down 50% from Force Awakens' haul, making it one of the most embarrassing conclusions to a movie series ever. especially one backed by the full force of Disney's marketing machine. And get this, even with all those billions pouring in, the sequel still managed to lose Disney around $2 billion overall. I mean, they really thought shoving their misguided inclusivity agenda down everyone's throats would print cash. They were wrong. But this all comes from a very weird double standards in popular culture. Ask yourself, when was the last time you heard demands for a female-driven franchise to make things more, inclusive for male viewers? Can you imagine the outrage if, say, Barbie got rebooted with Ken as the lead character? Or if the Sex and the City revival brought in a male bestie character to make the men feel more represented? The reality is, franchises aimed at predominantly female audiences get to exist in peace without society questioning their right to targeted entertainment. But the moment a franchise skews towards guys, it's immediately labeled as exclusionary and regressive. Cue the think pieces demanding more female representation and diversity, until the property becomes completely unrecognizable.
Where is their father? They have no father.
It's like the industry is stuck in this mindset that anything even remotely associated with male interests needs to be feminized and made palatable for the masses. As if women just can't handle entertainment that doesn't explicitly cater to their sensibilities. Newsflash, there are plenty of women, like my sisters, who loved franchises like Star Wars just fine before they got inclusived into oblivion. At the end of the day, it's just typical Hollywood narcissism, so blinded by their own egos and out-of-touch worldviews that they genuinely believe we should all just automatically love whatever brand of garbage they're peddling. But the thing is, people just don't care. I mean, the utter arrogance of the entertainment elites to assume they can shove any old tripe down people's throats under the guise of being progressive or inclusive is just mind-boggling. Fans are not stupid. They can smell disingenuous crap from a mile away. If they actually cared about making good entertainment, they'd spend less time navel-gazing about how virtuous they are and more time, telling good stories. And when the inevitable backlash comes, they have to act surprised and claim everyone's a bigot for not loving their creatively bankrupt vision. Newsflash. If you make something people don't want to watch, they won't watch it.
Dudes roll out of film school, throw on a Spielberg hat, and go, I know everything that I'm doing. And the reality is that you can do it. Like, you just have to have the confidence to walk in there and pretend like you know how to do it.
So, when exactly was the last time Hollywood hotshots decided to throw men a bone and make something actually meant to appeal to them? Let me rack my brain here. Was it during the Jurassic period? The Dark Ages? Or maybe that beautiful mythical era when men were allowed to have nice things without it being considered a threat to society? But the geniuses over at the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse have fully embraced their new, singular mission. Crank out as much female pandering content as humanly possible, while systematically ostracizing and alienating poor, simple menfolk. Why? Because in their eyes, men are not just the opposite sex. They're the living embodiment of the patriarchal scourge that must be eradicated. And where better to wage this glorious war on men than the hallowed grounds of Star Wars? A franchise that has become an outright hostile environment for anyone unfortunate enough to have been born without double X chromosomes. The creators, the showrunners, the decision makers, all on a crusade to make men so profoundly uncomfortable, so indescribably emasculated, that they have no choice but to take a hint and retreat back to their caves. I mean, Star Wars has been an irredeemable, festering dumpster fire for longer than I care to recall, and with visionaries like Leslie Headland and directors who love making men uncomfortable, steering the ship. That's not changing anytime soon. These are the fans who gaze upon the franchise they claim to adore and see nothing but a towering mountain of problematic, unprogressive offenses wholly unfit for modern civilization's delicate sensibilities. Apparently, we've reached the point in the culture wars where a piece of media can't simply exist as, a form of entertainment. No, it must achieve the laurus nobilis status of fully intersectional representational accomplishment. If a film, show, or book doesn't hit every conceivable ethnic, gender, cultural, and identity benchmark while deferentially pandering to each subgroup, it's little more than a bigoted waste of celluloid. They've fully embraced the toxic ideology that we're all just cogs, soulless, personality-devoid machines bound irrevocably to the identity bucket we were unceremoniously deposited into at birth. Independent thought? Developing a self-actualized identity beyond your assigned label? Forging meaningful connections across the vast spectrum of human experience? Oh, that's cute, but also far too dangerous to be tolerated. This deranged, regressive liberal notion that our race, a gender, cultural clan is the alpha and omega of our existence, that we're not truly individuals, but amalgamated copies formed from the same pre-approved phyllo dough. Yeah, it's a cancerous mindset. It insists on cleaving humanity into a million tiny slivers, rigidly boxing everyone into categories and willfully denying our inherent nuances, our commonalities, our shared soul as a species. And of course, this single-minded obsession with identity above everything else means that creativity, vision, fresh ideas, all of that gets strangled in the crib. Because why bother crafting an enthralling, emotionally resonant narrative when you can just lazily tick off diversity quotient checkboxes and call it a day? Which brings me to The Acolyte, an egregious exercise in brand dilution so disassociated from its supposed roots that it might as well take place in the friggin' Veggie Tales cinematic universe. But hey, at least it gives the creators a chance to cram in some subliminal cultural Marxism about how evil is just like this crazy nuanced and misunderstood concept that we should avoid judging too harshly. The truth is, Star Wars as we knew and loved it died a long, agonizing death years ago. But I'm past the point of getting annoyed or hoping against hope that it somehow fails even harder. These days, the entire franchise exists as little more than a handy punching bag, just a cautionary example to point to whenever we need context on how not to royally nuke a beloved IP into oblivion. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling this way either. The magic, the wonder, the attachment to these stories and characters, it's all been utterly decimated in the name of scoring purity points on the acceptable culture war battlefield. The Force? It's deader than the Randian dream, battered into an unrecognizable clump by the very people putting it on a pedestal. But hey, at least we'll always have those cringe compilations and meme content to remind us of what a glorious, nigh unreplicable train wreck this all became.